Well, the chances of a global recession are on the rise and have been spurred on further by the Bank of England raising interest rates overnight to their highest level in 15 years. ACY Securities Chief Economist Clifford Bennett has been predicting a recession for several years now, and I caught up with him a little bit earlier.
Most people are expecting 25 points and perhaps a little bit of a cautious approach given how bad the economy is doing. Of course, they had that inflation number that stayed up at 8.7% when they were expecting a decline that came out recently. And I think that shocked them into, no, we really have to hit this on the head now with big, sledgehammer 50 points and say that we're prepared to do a lot more. So they've come out really hard out of the boxing corner, if you like, to just focus only on inflation when the economy is really in trouble. And consumer sentiment there, I think, is down near, lockdown levels. It's near GFC levels. It's near the 1980s recession levels. It's ticking up a little bit, which is good, but consumers remain very concerned across Europe. And I think it's the trend of the Western economic sphere, really, this idea that consumers and businesses are worried, but the bigger end of town has tried to act like everything will be all right. And the central banks have said, we're going to prove we're good central banks after we so badly messed up at the beginning by, calling inflation transitory. So huge historic proportions error by Western central banks there. And then they've gone, OK, so we have to get our credibility back. So how we will do that is we're going to be the champions of the fight against inflation. And they're just hitting it with everything they can. And they don't mind the collateral damage, which is getting quite severe across the United States, Europe, UK, Australia.
Yeah, wanted to talk about the US because overnight the US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said the odds of a recession in the US have actually decreased in her view due to the strong jobs market and inflation slowly coming down. But what's your reading into the recession risk?
It's very odd for Janet Yellen to say something like that because she's not usually political in her comments. Wink, wink. But no, I think the prospect of a soft landing, if you can call it that, I think we're already in hard landing territory. But the prospect of a soft landing has increased. So she's correct in that regard. But I don't think it's increased enough to save the US from, not necessarily, we talk about recession and we want to hang labels on things. I think it's more important to realise and identify that the United States, like some other economies, but particularly the United States, seems more dysfunctional than most at the moment. I think the United States, what people have to come to grips with, unfortunately, is the United States could be flat growth, bobbing in and out of positive and negative for the next 1 to 3 years, such as the damage that's been done by the banking crisis, by the COVID dysfunction that's still flowing through the economy at this late hour. And I think with the central bank, the Federal Reserve, raising rates aggressively with another 2 or 3 hikes to come this year, unless the banking crisis pops up, they'll stop. But otherwise, or re-emerges, I should say, but otherwise, I think the Fed's going to hike at least 2, maybe 3 times this year. And I think it's all a big mistake.
Yeah, you've been sort of predicting a recession since mid-2020-ish, so more than a couple of years now.
It's been a while. It's nice to be right, finally. No, I did say we'd have that post-COVID boom on the spending.
That happened.
And that happened. And then after a period of time, we would fall into a valley, and that's what's happened.
And Australia-wise, recession risk, are we just looking at some negative 0.1, 0.2 quarters of growth, negative GDP growth, or would it be more than that?
The Australian economy could actually fall off a cliff. It really could. Even this Q2 that we're in now, we might already be in the first half of a recession. We don't even have, but we just don't have the data for it yet. I think there's a lot of anecdotal information, a lot of business leaders saying things aren't as good as they used to be. The RBA keeps hiking rates. Inflation is, there's only 2 other economies in the top 20, 25 countries who have inflation higher than Australia, and that is Italy and the UK. So Australia's inflation is extreme by global standards, and it's a function of all that government spending for COVID, the excesses of it. I mean, we had the highest per capita spend in the world, so we really went all out on the COVID rescue packages. And then rates low for too long, economic boom sucks economic activity from the future back into that COVID boom period, leaves a big void where we are now. And that's why we could really just slide off rather quickly here We could see it in the Q2 data, but I think Q3 could be even harder.
Well, you mentioned inflation. We will get the monthly inflation data next week for the month of May. Cash rates at 4.1%. How much higher could interest rates go here?
I'm feeling a little bit personally chuffed, sorry. I mean, I will say when I get things wrong too, but I have forecast that the RBA cash rate would go to between 4.5% to 5.5% from the very beginning. And not because I think it should, but I could see how the RBA would double up its errors. Saying that the world's global inflation experience won't come to our shores, promising rates won't go up. And then I said in real time, they're getting this wrong. We should be raising rates now gently. We could have had a gently
kind of like New Zealand. They've been going gently.
And from early, and that's what I was advocating in real time, and some other people were too. Instead of this, don't do anything till it's too late and then panic. And that's where the RBA's been, that's where the Federal Reserve's been. It's causing, we talk about these economic characteristics of what's going on in the world, but there are real people out in the world who are really suffering because of these shock interest rate hikes. I mean, they're among the most aggressive in the history of modern Western economies. So they're very severe. They're not as high as we've been before, but the rate of change is very sudden and very steep. And it is catching people out. It is causing stress in the community.
Clifford, Bennett, thanks so much for your time.
I tried to squeeze a lot in quickly. I hope I did. Thank you.